When I first met Sarah, everything seemed perfect. We hit it off immediately and our chemistry was undeniable. We spent every possible moment together, laughing, sharing stories, and building what felt like the beginning of a beautiful relationship. She was everything that I'd ever wanted in a partner. Smart, funny, kind, and incredibly beautiful. After a few weeks of dating, we decided to take our relationship to the next level, so she moved in with me and I couldn't have been happier. On our first night together, we had a cozy evening watching movies and eventually we fell asleep in each other's arms. Around 3 a.m, I was jolted awake by an eerie guttural sound. I turned over and I saw Sarah sitting upright in the bed, her eyes closed but her mouth moving rapidly. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was deep and menacing, nothing like her usual voice. "Sarah," I whispered, trying not to sound too alarmed. She didn't respond, just kept muttering those strange guttural sounds. I shook her gently, hoping to wake her up from what I assumed was a nightmare. Her eyes flew open, staring straight ahead, yet it felt like she was looking through me. Then, as suddenly as it started, she lay back down and went silent. I've heard of sleep talking before, hell, even I sleep talk, but this felt different. I spent the next few minutes heart pounding, trying to convince myself that it was just an odd episode of sleep talking. But a nagging feeling of dread settled in my chest, making it hard to fall back asleep. The next night, I wondered if it might happen again. We went to bed around midnight and I tried to push the previous night's events out of my mind. However, around 3 a.m, I woke up feeling an intense pressure, like someone was staring at me. I opened my eyes and I found Sarah standing on the edge of the bed, looking down at me with a blank expression. "Sarah? What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't respond. She just continued to stand there, her eyes glazed over and unfocused. I reached out to touch her arm, but she stepped back, almost tripping off the bed. Before I could react, she turned and laid back down as if nothing had happened. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she sleepwalking, having some sort of psychological episode? I decided to talk to her about it in the morning, but when she woke up, she had no recollection of standing on the bed. She laughed it off, attributing it to stress and overtiredness, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was really wrong. By the third night, I was practically holding my breath, waiting for something strange to happen. I barely slept, my senses were on high alert, and without fail, at 3 a.m, I was woken by the sound of footsteps. I turned to see Sarah, her eyes were half closed. She then started walking out of the bedroom. "Sarah," I called softly, but she didn't respond. I got up and I followed her as she made her way through the house and out the back door. She stepped into the backyard and stood there, motionless under the moonlight. I watched from the doorway and I didn't know what to do. She stood there for what felt like an eternity, whispering in the same guttural tone that I'd heard before. After a few minutes, I gathered the courage to approach her. I gently took her by the hand and I led her back to the bedroom. She followed without resistance, and as soon as she lay down, she fell back into a deep sleep. I, on the other hand, lay awake, with my mind reeling with questions. What was she saying, and why did she go outside? Had she been doing other strange things while I slept? I decided to install security cameras to try and get some answers. The next few nights went without incident. However, in the morning, I went outside to see if there was any evidence of Sarah's nighttime activities. To my horror, I found these strange symbols drawn on the concrete in the backyard. They were intricate and bizarre, like something out of a horror movie. It made me feel sick to my stomach. What the fuck was wrong with her? Was she trying to prank me? Determined to understand what was happening, I reviewed the security footage. My heart pounded as I watched Sarah leave the house. Her movements were quick and deliberate. She stood in the backyard, her lips moving as if she was speaking to someone, but there was no one there. She then picked up a piece of chalk and started drawing these symbols on the ground, her eyes never opening once. When she was done, she stood there for a few moments as if she was admiring her work. And then the strange thing was, She ran back inside and climbed back into bed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could she do all this in her sleep? What did those symbols mean? I spent the next couple of days researching sleepwalking and the possibility of supernatural influences. I read countless articles and forums trying to make sense of Sarah's behaviour. Apparently, around 3 AM is the witching hour, and this could explain her sleepwalking around the house and even the backyard, but the symbols and the demonic muttering just didn't sit right with me. I found stories of people experiencing strange phenomena, from demonic possessions to cursed individuals. As ridiculous as it sounded, I couldn't help but consider the possibility that something supernatural was at play. I was scared for Sarah and myself. I needed answers, and I didn't know where to turn. That night, I was on edge, my nerves frayed from the lack of sleep. I tried to talk to Sarah about the symbols, but she brushed it off, claiming she had no memory of drawing anything. Her dismissive attitude really pissed me off, but I was kind of scared, so I didn't really want to push it with her. I went to bed. I couldn't stop thinking about what might happen. Around 3 AM, I woke up to a chilling sight. Sarah was standing at the edge of the bed, staring down at me with an intensity that was terrifying. "Sarah, what the fuck?" I said, but instead of responding, she let out a low, guttural growl. Then, the blanket suddenly ripped off me, and she began to howl. A sound so inhumane and terrifying that I felt paralyzed with fear. Her face started to morph, shifting between her usual appearance and something grotesque and demonic. I tried to move, to run, but an invisible force held me down. She crawled up the wall, her limbs bending in unnatural ways, and then onto the ceiling. I watched in horror as she positioned herself above me, her eyes glowing with a malevolent light. With a sudden terrifying lunge, she dropped down onto me, her claws digging into my chest. The pain was excruciating as she tore into my flesh. Her eyes locked onto mine with a crazed intensity. Blood poured from my wounds, and I felt my strength draining away. She kept clawing, tearing into my chest, until she ripped out my heart. In my last moments, I looked into her eyes and saw, not Sarah, but a demonic entity that had taken over her body. My vision faded, and the last thing I heard was her demonic laughter echoing in my ears.
Dear listener, if you're hearing this, don't ignore the signs. Someone might be demon possessed. What happened to our friend here was beyond belief, but it was real. If you notice anything strange, act quickly, get help, and protect yourself, because one day I might possess you too.